Alright, so now we're going to do our swivel knife cuts on this Don Gonzalez pattern. And this is not the whole pattern. If you buy the whole pattern, it's a full portfolio front. This is a lot bigger because I went through and took it into my Adobe Illustrator and sized it to fit this piece of leather. This is 7 to 8 ounce oak leaf tooling leather from Tandy's. And I've played with Wicket and Craig, and I've played with shit, forgot the name. Well, it'll come back to me in a bit. But I like them a lot. I like to look at my leather. I like to look and see what I'm buying. So first off, we're going to take our swivel knife and we're going to strop it just to clean it up, make sure it's nice and polished. I'm using white Jeweler's Rouge. Sometimes I use green, sometimes I use red. I kind of just use whatever's on the table. I was polishing some knives earlier with this, so it's what I rubbed onto this little piece of leather for a strop. And I like to sit to where I can actually look and see what I'm doing. I don't like to be far away from what I'm working on. And I don't like to bend over a whole lot, because when you do big stuff, you know, you got to do it almost all at once to make it look right. It doesn't look good. It doesn't look quite right to my eyes if I go through and tool for 2 or 3 hours and then let it dry all the way out and then come back to it later. It just, whenever you recase it, everything that you've already done kind of loses definition. So, start right here. When you're cutting with your swivel knife for these florals, for just about anything other than like really light stuff for figure carving, aim to go about halfway through the leather. Don't try to cut all the way through in a single cut, you know, because then you're just sitting there and your leather falls apart. Don't know if y'all saw that, but I came in on this one and did my little half circle to the left, and then I came back and did a half circle to the right. That's how I prefer to do them. And if you'll notice, none of these lines are quite touching. Make sure you're tapering these lines out also. Don't dig all the way in right off the bat. When you come in with your beveler and you've dug in all the way right off the bat and you try to taper that beveler down, you'll have this big deep cut where the beveler's only going about halfway down it or quarter of the way down it, and it looks kind of funky. On these leaves, you'll notice leaves and petals. I like to do these scallops I do not try to cut the inside curve of these, because unless you're using a angled knife, you're going to have a little bit of the leather turned over either on the inside or the outside, and that's even with cutting with the knife straight up and down perfect. When you turn like that, it just folds some over and it looks funky. So I finish out these interior curves with my pedal lifter, and I think it works the best. So we've got that leaf and that scroll done. And we're going to come in and start doing the interior of these flowers. And this is where I come in and I told you you're going to fix any of your little mess ups with your swivel knife. You see, that doesn't look quite right, at least not to me. It might look fine to some of y'all, but not me. So I'm going to come in and give it a nice gentle sweeping curve, fix that petal, come into this one, nice gentle sweeping curves. I don't like them to turn all of a sudden, and it's just personal preference. So when you feel your swivel knife starting to get a little bit draggy, just go ahead and strop it a little bit more. They all do it. I've never had a swivel knife or a piece of leather that did not get draggy after a bit. And you don't have to go through and, you know, pull it across that stropping board 30 times. Once or twice on each side of the blade should do you pretty good. There's our flower done, and all this around it's good. So let's turn this. I like to turn these smaller pieces. It's just easier. I mean, something huge, you know, like a big old rifle scabbard, you're not going to be able to turn it to get the right angle everywhere. Now here's something to look at. When you do these big, long, straight ones, go ahead and pick your arm up a little bit and move your whole arm. Don't try to just do it moving your wrist or moving your hand. Move your whole arm for these big, long lines, and you'll get a smoother line, you know? On these smaller ones, you know, you can just do your wrist. You don't have to move your whole arm to do it. But on the long lines, I find it's easier just to pick my arm up off the table and go like this instead of and while we've got it right here, we can go ahead and
has nothing in it whatever to do with squirrels. There was a bug, a rare bug. There's a great bug in her Rutland bog.
move this one just a bit more. And you probably, you know, you need to practice doing these cuts at weird angles, because you'll get onto some project and you'll have a cut that's just one cut that's off from everything else. And it's just easier to go through and learn how to do these backwards weird angle cuts, so that when you get in that situation, you can just go ahead and do it and not have to turn the whole piece of leather all over the place trying to get to it.
Oh, wait a minute, it could have been a squirrel's egg, couldn't it? stuff lately. See, but look what happens to the Easter time. Okay, here we go. Now, on that day there was a duck with platypus, a rare duck with
Alright, getting draggy again, so we're going to come over here and give ourselves some strops. Thought that sounded bad. Okay.
And let me tell you, it wasn't one of mine. There was a hare in the mighty, colored present, bird, the egg, the nest, the twig, twig, and the branch, and then lemon, tree, and hole, above, down in the valley.
Alright, so all we got left now is the flower. Alright, swivel knife is done. There we go. Next I'm going to start doing these flowers. I'm going to do the flowers and do the leaves in the next video, so stay tuned and stay watching.